Hi everybody, I'm Tim from troutandfeather.com, and in this fly tying tutorial I'm going to be showing you a couple variations of the soft hackle pheasant tail. Stay tuned. Alright, let's get started tying this soft hackle pheasant tail. This is actually going to be a variation. Once I finish this pattern, I'm going to show you a second variation. They are both excellent patterns that I have in my box, and they both work really well. Let's get started on this one. In my Stonfo Cayman vise, I have a hook from Allen Fly Fishing. This is their S402BL. It's a size 14, though I will tie and fish this pattern between the sizes of 12 to an 18. What I really like about the 402BL is, for starters, it's barbless, which makes it really easy to get the bead on. And this is a tungsten bead, a 2mm gold. The second thing is that 2 in the 402 stands for 2 extra long, which just gives you a little bit more length, really helps out with that bead, and whenever you add in the hackle at the end. Well, let's get started on the actual fly. I'm going to be using some uni thread. This is 8/0 olive dun. It's a great color. I love to use this on a lot of my soft hackles and nymphs. Just going to establish a little base, get rid of the tag. We're going to leave our thread right about maybe one thread wrap back from where the barb would be. We're going to add in our tail. Now, unlike the traditional pheasant tail, in this case I'm going to be using a product from Hemingway's. These are their mayfly nymph rubber tails. These have a great look to them. They're very realistic. They come in a variety of sizes and colors. I'm going to be using the medium cigar brown. The cigar brown is really nice because it's one of those colors that you can take a brown or black Sharpie to either create a barred look or simply darken them if you want it darker, though I rarely do. But the other nice thing about this material is that, unlike traditional pheasant tail, the pheasant tail on a lot of my nymphs, after I catch a few fish on them, they have a tendency to break. They tend to be very fragile. There's very little you can do to protect the actual tailing fibers. And it seems like that tail material, once it's gone, you are out of luck, which is why I really don't use pheasant tail as a tailing fiber too much anymore. If somebody asks for it or a friend wants some of them, then I'll tie it that way. But primarily I'm now using Coq de Leon, maybe some mallard flank, or these mayfly nymph rubber tails. They're better products. They last a lot longer than that traditional pheasant tail. Do I still love pheasant tail? Yeah, absolutely. But it's just something I don't turn to as much because I want to get a little bit more longevity out of the pattern. Now, it's nice. We can easily tie this material in. There's a point that right in front of the tails, I'll kind of point this out. There's a wider section, and I don't like to tie that section down. It seems like the further you go back as you get closer to the tail, this entire section or this entire piece will just ride up. And I want it just cocked up a little bit, not at a 45-degree angle. We're talking more like around 20 degrees, somewhere in there. And then you have that perfect degree. Next, we're going to add in some wire, which we're going to use for ribbing and reinforcement. I'm using uni French wire. The color is gold and the size is small. I have a piece pre-cut. Next, I'm going to use some pheasant tail for the body. I'm just going to try to find some longer fibers. Cut around half a dozen of them. I'm going to tie these in by the tips. I don't have to worry about trimming the tips or anything. Even though it tends to be a fragile part, I can really just kind of extend them a little bit and not worry too much about that. Once I have those locked in, I'm just going to make sure I got everything out of the way and bring my thread up to the thorax. All right, next I'm just going to wrap these forward. If you don't feel comfortable wrapping them by hand, I would recommend just getting a set of hackle pliers or something like the Stonfo hackle plier. I have this out because I'll be using it for the soft hackle. But in this case, I really prefer to wrap these up by hand. They go really quick. And you don't have to bring them up the whole way because I want to have a relatively healthy thorax. All right, next I'm going to counter wrap my wire. This French wire from Uni has a great look to it. Let's get that out of there. All right, in this case, for my thorax, I'm going to turn back to Hemingway's because they have this cool material. It's called peacock dubbing. I'm going to be featuring this in another video. It's going to be on my nymph material video because what's great about this, and let me zoom out so you can kind of see this in its entirety. This is a collection of all these peacock dubbings in different colors. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Looks like a dozen of them. And you just have a ton of variety. You can see there's really not one that I've used more than other. I've been playing around with this for a few months now. I was at a recent fly tying event and I really used this second one down. It's kind of a darker peacock dubbing, almost a black. Now what I'm going to do with this fly here, I'm going to think about the sulfurs. I love fishing during the sulfur season. I love using a nymph, a pheasant tail nymph that has just a little bit of orange in it. And now in this case we have some orange peacock dubbing. To apply this stuff, I'm just going to turn it on its side. If it's not already out, I just use my dubbing needle and just pull it out a little bit. Then I'm just going to pull out some sections. I don't want a ton of it in one clump, but I want a long and relatively translucent amount. Once I have that, occasionally I'll put a little bit of wax on my thread. Otherwise, I'll just spin it on. Maybe get a little saliva just to tighten everything up. And then wrap. I'll typically start at the front, wrap back, create that healthy thorax, and then wrap back to the front. Let me zoom back in, show you what that looks like. Now at this point, a lot of guys would immediately jump into the soft hackle, but I don't want to do that yet. I'm just going to grab a piece of Velcro. I just want to play this stuff out a little bit. I want to just create a little bit of that translucency over the entire fly. Just get that orange impression going a little bit more than it is right now. So I'm not picking out a lot, but just enough to show me that there's something there. I'm going to pull all those strands back, and then next we're going to add in our soft hackle. Now whenever I traditionally think of a soft hackle, that material that comes up is always going to be Partridge. That's just that one traditional material. I tend to kind of shy away from it because that barring is a great look. However, the colors aren't exactly what I'm always going for. I kind of like darker ones. We're talking from grouse and pheasants. And lately I've been using a ton of hen hackles. Now on my variation, I'm going to show you a second one. But for starters, I'm going to be tying with this, and it's called a Hungarian Partridge JV hen hackle. This is a really cool product. They're very tough to get your hands on. So if you have a chance to pick up one of these, I highly recommend it. They're from Clearwater Hackle. Again, it's a JV hen. There's a bunch of different colors they're producing in this, but this one's the Hungarian Partridge color. So what I'll do is I'll just tear one feather off, and I have this one already prepped. I'll pull all the fibers off one side, and then hold on to the tips and stroke those remaining fibers down. Then I'm going to tie it in by the tip. I need a couple of wraps to lock it in place. Once I have that tip tied in, I'm actually going to just get the tip out of there. I don't want it in there whatsoever. And then I'm going to make about 3 wraps of this, and you're going to see it's just going to be really, really gentle in a sense. I'm going to grab my Stonfo hackle pliers. There's one. As I make this second, I'm going to start to pull all my fibers back. There's 2. I'm going to do the same thing with this third one. Pull all those fibers. I'm going to release it from the hackle pliers. If you have a good look at those. I'm just going to stroke all those fibers back a little bit. Put a couple locking wraps in. At this point, I can get the hackle stem out of there. We're almost to our finished fly. All I got to do now is just finish it off with a little bit of a whip finish. 3, 4, and 5. And that's it. If you want to do one more, just to make sure nothing's going to happen, and make sure it's secure, because I tend to not use any head cement on these soft hackles. And there we go. Tell me that doesn't look like a killer soft hackle. This is without a doubt just a great pattern. You know it's going to hold up. There's going to be so much movement in the water. You don't have to worry about those tails coming off, and we have that nice orange thorax, which is almost going to act like a hot spot. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to get this fly out of here. I'm going to show you a new material list for the second fly. This is another one with tied with a few more variations. I'll tell you a little bit about that pattern, and then I'll wrap up this video and share some of my thoughts regarding these two flies. Now that you've seen the materials for this pattern, let me tell you a little bit more about some of its characteristics. For starters, the tail is natural pheasant tail. That's something I returned to in this pattern. It's a great fiber. It's been around for who knows how many years, and it works. As you move forward, the next thing you're going to notice is a kind of a hot spot at the rear of the fly. That's something that I'm seeing more and more often. I tie this one with some 6/0 fire orange thread from Uni. This is just a really great thread that just screams in the water. This is something that I'll use in a, we'll say, a highly pressured water, such as like a delayed harvest type area, or I'll use it when the water's just a little bit off color. Next, I just have pheasant tail. Again, for my ribbing, I went with the Uni-French gold, size small. And then for the thorax, I returned to the Hemingway's product, but I went with more of a brown. So somewhere in this range. See if I can pull it out one of these sides. I'm sorry, this bottom one right here. So I went with a little bit more of a brown look this time, again using that peacock dubbing. Then when we get up to the soft hackle, to the legs, I wanted a little bit more of a darker look. So in this case, I just went with a traditional hen hackle. I prepped it the same way. I took off one fiber, I stripped off the left side of the feather, I tied it in by the tip, and I just made around 3 wraps. It looks very delicate, and it will fish well. This was the same hook, the S402BL from Allen Fly Fishing, and again, it was a tungsten ball bead. It was a gold 2mm. So these are two just incredible variations of the soft hackle pheasant tail. Let me change the camera angle here, and I'll tell you a little bit more about these two patterns. Now that we've finished tying the soft hackle pheasant tail, let's talk a little bit more about the pattern in general. If you do a Google search of the top 5 nymphs of all time, the pheasant tail is always going to be on that list because, quite honestly, they work. If you look at an entire sleeve, an entire side of one of my nymph boxes, it is just loaded with pheasant tails. But more importantly, it's loaded with a lot of variations, like this soft hackle pheasant tail that I tied in the video. That's one of the keys to the pheasant tail's success, at least in my mind, because you can just add so many different characteristics to that fly that will make it a little bit more fishable in your natural water, in those waters that you fish on a regular basis. If you think about this pattern today, there were a few changes that I made to the original pheasant tail, and I had a reason for making each of those changes. For starters, if you look at the thorax, I added an orange thorax, and that was because, quite honestly, I fished during the sulfur hatch quite a bit, and I believe those fish really key on that color orange. This is a pattern that I could fish before the sulfur hatch, during the sulfur hatch, and even a week or two after the sulfur hatch when those fish have that color orange just locked into their memory. If you fish during a certain hatch and you know that the duns of that mayfly are of a certain color, I by all means recommend placing that color in the thorax of your soft hackle pheasant tails because those fish will key on that at times and you will have a lot of success on that pattern, as I've done so in the past. Now, the original calls for peacock herl, and though I absolutely always recommend peacock herl, adding other colors into that thorax will definitely pay off. Next, I added a hot spot by simply using some uni thread, that fire orange color. Having hot spots is just one of those easy changes that you can do to fly patterns, and they will really pay off in the long run. I tend to fish those patterns with hot spots on waters that get fished a lot, that have a lot of guys throwing a lot of flies. And I think fishing those patterns that just have something different might really be the difference. Also, I think that the contrast between those really bright colors and the dull colors of the pheasant tail really key a trigger in the trout, and I've seemed to have a lot of success with them over the years. Next, I changed the tail from the original pheasant tail fibers to the Hemingway's Mayfly Nymph rubber tails. I did that for a number of reasons, but most importantly because the natural pheasant tail material is just not the strongest, and knowing that it tears off quite easily, making the change to a synthetic is something that will make it a lot easier for me to fish that fly on a regular basis and not have to worry about changing it once the tails fall off. And then finally, I added soft hackles to this pheasant tail. I think soft hackles are just an incredible material to add to so many nymphs. Number one, if you're fishing the nymph on the bottom, those soft hackles will just simply appear as those nymph legs. But if you decide to fish this fly further up in the water column, those soft hackles can really signal the emergence of the pattern, and that's something I believe the trout can absolutely key on. In these patterns, I tied them with tungsten beads, but if you would prefer to fish this fly further up in the water column, then I would say just go with a regular metal bead, or you can go with just no bead whatsoever. That way you can fish this fly on top if you really choose to do so, and I definitely have a lot of these tied with no beads whatsoever. So those are some of the variations that I made in this video, and I know there are many more out there. If you have any other modifications or variations you've made to the pheasant tail, please by all means share them in the comments section below, because I know we can always help one another to take those great patterns and sometimes make them even better. Well, with all of that said, I used a lot of products in this video. If you'd like to learn more about them, I provided links to a lot of them in the description of this video. As always, thanks for viewing this video. If you have any comments or questions, you can leave them in the comments section below, or you can email me at tcammisa@gmail.com. If you'd like to watch more of my fly tying or fly fishing tutorials, you can do so at my website, which is troutandfeather.com. I also have a Facebook page, and if you'd like some regular updates, please like that page, and you will be provided with them. Well, as always, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this video. This is an absolutely great pattern, and by all means, get some of these soft hackle pheasant tails into your boxes.